Hello, this is Bryce Krawchuk, powerlifter. I'm answering this log for the record. In case I don't make it, it's 3:13 on February 10th, and I'm alive, obviously. But I'm guessing that's going to come as a surprise to my training partners and most of social media and everyone, so surprise. So we started off on day one with a big raw comp day. So I hit my raw comp squat up to 255 kilos for a triple. And this, for me, is a really, really good starting point. The reason being, in the past, I've dealt with a lot of hip pain. I've often, especially at the beginning of a block, had to really limit the weight on the bar so that I could avoid aggravating the symptoms of that injury. Now, it was pretty cool to be able to actually hit what seemed like a real 8 RPE, as opposed to thinking about reps pre-pain and almost using a sort of secondary RPE scale. I also hit my heaviest raw comp bench of the week, and that was 172.5 kilos for a single, followed by a nice smooth triple at 162.5. I'm really happy with the quality of this work. I feel like oftentimes, especially as blocks progress, I tend to drop off in the quality and the pauses, in the length of the pauses, and just the quality of the technique overall. So I was really happy with how well I executed on this day. I also did some overhead press, 80 kilos for 6, which for me is pretty damn good. Overhead press has been a bit of a struggle, so it's fun and interesting and exciting to see it going uncharacteristically well, especially so early on. Now, my raw deadlift day, I say raw in quotation marks because it's a deadlift with chains on my day 2. So I worked up to 312.5 kilos with about 35 kilos of chains, and then worked through a whole bunch of triples at 290 kilos. Now, as far as the deadlift goes, I did start this block with a minimal amount of hip pain, but that seems to be lessening as the weeks will go on. This is actually week 2 of a 5-week block, which is going to take me into Nats. And it seems that the better trained I become, the less pain I'm in. But like I said, that generally means I need to start the blocks really conservatively. This has been the heaviest and most aggressively I've been able to start a block in a long time without things flaring up. So moved on that day to the mid-pin bench press, which is something I'm going to need to modify. I've grown. I'm filling out my weight class, and I've become too big to use the competition rack's pin height as a mid-pin bench. It ends up being about a 1 board, so only maybe 2 inches, an inch and a half off my chest. So I'll need to switch bench presses to actually get into more of the middle of the range of motion where the exercise is intended to target. Now, despite that, worked up to a nice single at 192.5 kilos and some working sets in and around the 175, 180 range for some reps. So it was a productive day overall. Now, this is sort of where the week gets fun into this day 3 and 4. This is where we throw on the equipment. I'm starting to work with a training partner of mine, very good friend of mine named Ben. He's pretty new to knee wrapping, but he's volunteered to wrap my sessions before the meet and actually come to the meet and wrap my knees for me. I had the fortune of having a good friend, Eric Gunnum, from Sweden, wrap my knees at Worlds, and it just kind of spoiled me, for lack of a better term. So Ben's going to be coming out and wrapping my sessions. Now, by the end of the session, he was able to wrap my drop set, but I wrapped my own top sets, and he practiced between my singles, which were 350 kilos, 355 kilos, and 360 kilos. Again, this is much more aggressive in terms of loading as when compared to where I normally am this early on in the block. I've only just begun this comp prep, but normally I have 2 blocks back to back to get ready for a meet, and in this case I only have 1, so the intensity is ramping rather quickly. Depth usually isn't there until about 375 kilos, so I'm not too concerned about that, but yeah, that's one of those things that we'll sort out as we get closer to the meet. Also on day 3, I got into my bench shirt, and really happy with how the bench shirt is feeling. I took in the sleeves before my last block into Worlds in November, and it's fitting much tighter now. I don't know that I've really gained all that much in terms of scale weight, but it certainly feels like I'm filling things out differently, which is promising in terms of body composition. So I hit a 227.5 kilo single, a 230 kilo single, and a 232.5 kilo single. Last week I was able to touch with 227, but this week I didn't force the touch because I was really not happy with the quality of the rep that came from forcing that touch at 227.5. I also did a fairly large amount of back off work. Now for me, I usually end up with those top 3 singles and maybe 1 set of 5, but in this case, I had 3 full back off sets, the 225 for a double, 217.5 for 2 triples, and that made for a pretty full day. The last day of the week here was deadlifts, and worked up to a 350 single in my suit, which moved really well. I'm getting a little bit more extension prior to my pull, and you can actually see me on this rep pull most of the way in, think, no, that's not quite enough, pull the rest of the way in, and then pull the rep, and it moves quite well. I think it would have been a little bit speedier if I didn't have to kind of readjust during that initial sort of pulling in, but I was really able to nail the back off sets. I hit 320 kilos, so 705 pounds for 3 sets. And that's got to be some kind of volume PR. Those felt great. They felt very challenging, but I felt very capable and confident in doing them, which I think is often a really good combination for training stress. This is the beginning of Equipped Nationals training. There will be more to follow, that is, unless I run out of food. Yeah.